Morning, students. Welcome back to our economics class here, right? So from past 2-3 days, we are discussing the important questions which are useful for you for your supplementary exams, right? So here, first chapter we have done with an LAQ, SAQ and VSAQs. Second chapter also previously we have discussed with the LAQ from your second chapter, as well as all the VSAQs also we have discussed, right? So now we are going to start with our third chapter, which is having more weightage. That is, you will get compulsory LAQ, SAQ and 2 VSAQs will be there. So chapter weightage is more compared to all the previous chapters. From third chapter weightage we are having more. So we are going to discuss the main important questions from this chapter. Okay. So first I'll be discussing the LAQ of this chapter. We will see what are the possibilities of the questions from this chapter. So your LAQs will be, first one, how do you reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth? In distribution of income and wealth. Okay, this is one question for your LAQ. Second question, causes for poverty. And another question is causes for unemployment. So these are the main questions we have to prepare from this. Out of these, compulsory one LAQ will be coming for you. Okay. So now what we and LAQ, SAQs and all, we will go topic wise. So I will tell you what weightage it will be there. Depending on that, you can prepare here. So first, we are going to discuss with our LAQ first. Okay. How do you reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth? Generally, as a developing economy, we find that in India, there are inequalities. Inequalities means what? Some people are rich, some people are poor. Those inequalities in income and wealth are high in India. Every developing economy faces this problem. But in India, what measures we are taking? Here, what is the question? They are not asking the causes. They are asking, how do you reduce? Means what measures in our country is taken to reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth. Means how we will reduce, what are the measures we are taking. So, how do you reduce inequalities? General inequalities means what? Some people are rich, some people are poor. Some people's income levels are high, some people's income levels are low. Why these inequalities are there? Because like we have seen, the causes will be during the Britishers period, Zamindari system was there. During that time, most of the people who have more wealth, right? They had landlords and all, their wealth is high. Still that is continuing in our country. People who are rich, they will get better educational facilities. So inequalities will arise over here. So now what measures are taken to reduce these inequalities in our country? So the measures here, we have to write the measures only, not the causes. Okay. So the first measure they have taken is land reforms and redistribution of agriculture land. Land reforms and redistribution of agriculture land. Land reforms means what? In India, to reduce income inequalities, our government has introduced various land reforms such as Zamindari system, abolition of Zamindari system, abolition of intermediaries. Tenancy reforms were introduced in the country to protect the tenant from the landlords. So these reforms helped the people to do the cultivation. So generally what happened in our country during the British era, as zamindars were there, when the farmers are cultivating the land, they are not able, whatever the production they have done, to that production, proper income is not given for the output. So most of the farmers have lost interest in cultivation. So they have remained backward over here. And zamindars, like landlords, they never used to cultivate. They don't know about the land and all. But still they have more and more acres of land. So that caused inequalities in country. So with these land reforms, our government introduced abolition of zamindari system. Okay, means in rural areas, whatever the zamindar landlords are all there, tenancy reforms, land ceiling act was introduced, where excess of land, though which is not cultivated, taken over by the government, and they are redistributed that land to the people who are landless. Okay, means redistributed means what? For example, one person is having 100 acres of land. He is not cultivating that 100 acres. So that as per land ceiling act, the limit was set for 18 acres. Okay, 18 acres of wetland and 50 acres of dry land. Above that, if any land is there, that will be taken over by the government, and that land is redistributed to the landless people, poor people, or in rural areas, whoever the farmers are there, landless people are there. For them, the excess land is redistributed. That is called as land reforms and redistribution of agriculture land. When you explain these points, simple. Make the points over here. What are the land reforms that are introduced in our country? Abolition of zamindari system, land ceiling act, and tenancy reforms. These have protected the landless people, protected the real cultivators of the land, and excess land those are having, landlords are having, excess land is taken over by the government, and that excess land is redistributed to the landless people. So with this, what will happen? The section of the society which are below the poverty line will get the land ownership, so that they can produce, they can do their own cultivation, they can earn the income. So that is one measure our government has taken to reduce the inequality. Okay, the next one, control over monopolies. Control over monopolies and restrictive trade practices. And restrictive trade practices. Control over monopolies and restrictive trade practices. So here, if you see, after India got independence, mostly 2 or 3 companies had the monopoly power. Monopoly power in the sense what? They are the only company who is having the power in the country. Monopoly means what benefit they will have? They can decide their own price. They will increase the price. People may not get benefited with the monopolies. So in India, we faced the problem of monopolies. So our government has introduced, means with the various reforms are introduced, like liberalization policy. What the liberalization policy has introduced here, whatever the monopoly is there, means whichever the company is having the monopoly power, they will take over the small unit or the sick unit, so that overall development will be possible. Means restrictions are there on the monopoly. How much production they should do, how much in the market they can supply, what price they can put. For all these restrictions were given under the act. Okay, so with this, the monopolies have been controlled. Chances are given to all the businesses to grow, and whichever need the support, financial support or like that, it will be provided by the monopoly. So this Monopoly and Restrictive Trade Practices Act is useful for industrial sector. For small scale cottage industry, this monopoly control is very useful here. So this strengthened the economic disparities, means as we have more and more industries in the country, it helps for employment creation, as well as income levels of the people also increases. With that intention, this concept was introduced in the country. And another measure they have taken is employment and wage policies. Employment and wage policies were introduced to reduce inequalities in the country. In this employment program, government has introduced various programs, right? Like you have the programs like IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program, NREP, National Rural Employment Guarantee Employment Program, RLEGP, Rural Landless Employment Guarantee Program. Means what these programs are? These programs are introduced in the rural areas where they create work for the unemployed people, right? Means as we know, India is an agricultural economy. In agriculture, complete 12 months they won't have work, right? Unseasonal, that time work will not be there. So various programs were introduced. For example, if you take IRDP, Integrated Rural Development Program, rural areas are developed. How they are developed? By providing education facilities, by providing health facilities, providing transportation. So for that, construction was done. Example I'm telling, construction of roads were done in the rural areas. If roads are constructed, transportation will be easy, right? So for that construction, they are using the labor from that area. So we can create employment in that area. Okay, next, National Rural Employment Program. This employment program is especially for the rural area youth. Okay, those who are educated, those who do not find any jobs, for them in rural area, like construction activity is done. Construction of dams. When dam is constructed, they need labor. Those labor are taken from that particular rural area. It will take almost 3 to 4 years like that to construct one big project over here. So 3 to 4 years, they will be employed. Later on, they can start their self-employment in that area. So that way, training is given to the youth in rural areas and job is also provided for the rural people. These are the employment and the wage policies that are provided by the government. Also here, now at present, we have the program which we call it as Mahatma Gandhi, MG and Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Okay, so under this scheme, the people who belong to the rural areas will get training, then they will be given financial assistance and employment will be created for them. If they are not working, self-employment also given, supporting will be given by the government. So these way, employment and wage policies are introduced by the government. Then so employment and wage policies. Then next measure they have taken is social security measures. To reduce these income inequalities, means like poor people and all, we have social security measures. Social security means what? Security is provided to them in the society. In the society, for example, a worker is working in an organization. Due to some accident, he lost his leg or some accident has happened. So if his job, if he don't work, their family cannot survive. So what is the, then again they will go below the poverty line. They can't work here. That person cannot work here. So our government has taken the measure that their family members are given insurance. Means that person is given insurance. Family member, one of the family member is given the job in that organization in replacement of that person. So these way, security measures are taken. So under security measures here, we can see worksman compensation was given in case of injury or death, disability or anything during the work. And maternity benefit is given for the women employees, as well as provident fund employees. Provident fund is provided where they can save their money, and that money is useful for the next savings, means whenever they are unable to do the job, that moment that savings are useful to them. Means it is nothing but providing financial security to the people in the society. Okay, so that is called as social security measures. Under social security measures, what we are having? Worksman compensation in case of disability or death or injury, anything happen, compensation will be given there. Financial compensation or job compensation will be given. Maternity benefits are provided. Employee provident fund is given. These all are the security measures that were taken to reduce the inequalities. The next we have minimum needs program. Minimum needs program, right? So this minimum needs program means here, during these 1970s, most of the people are below the poverty line. How many poverty eradication programs have been taken? That poverty could not be reduced, means the inequalities could not be removed. So what here they have taken plan here in the 6th 5-year plan, government is providing free and subsidized services. Minimum needs. What are the basic needs for the people? Education, health, right? These are the basic necessities of life. These programs, these facilities are provided at subsidized prices. Okay, subsidized services through improve the consumption levels of the people. Like under these food, health, especially food is a basic necessity. Food is provided at subsidized prices through our public distribution system. So the minimum needs are provided here so that the consumption levels in the rural areas will increase. As the consumption level increases, production level also increases. It will help for the reducing of inequalities in the country. Then another program for this is, another measure they have taken is program for upliftment of rural poor. Program for uplift of rural poor means to develop the rural poor, to get them out of the poverty. Here the various programs have taken up, such as resource and income development program, special area development program, and work program for the creation of supplementary employment opportunities. Means for uplifting, for developing the rural poor people, resource and income generation program. Resources are, local resources are utilized. By using the local resources, employment is created, right? Like our IRDP program, NREP program, all comes under this. Next, creating supplementary employment program. Supplementary employment means what? At that time, employment should be created. Construction works are taken up. With that, employment is created in that local area. Okay, and then special area development program. Because in India, we have drought-prone areas, continuous rainfall areas. So depending on area, how to develop the people, means how to create employment, how to increase their standard of living. All these programs were introduced in the country, which helped to reduce the inequalities in the country. And next is the another measure they have taken is the taxation policy, changing the taxation policy. Generally, before the programs and all, in our country, we had taxation, that is all people, means even in agriculture sector, anywhere, it is compulsory for them to pay the taxes. So what our government has done to reduce the inequalities in the country, they have introduced progressive taxation system. What is progressive taxation system? Higher the income, higher the tax. Lower the income, less the tax. So that progressive taxation system was introduced to prevent concentration of wealth in few hands. So these are the various programs that were taken up to reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth. Okay, so these points will be for your 10 marks. Very, very important question. Most repeated question for LAQ, your second LAQ. Okay, so what are the measures they are taken, how they are reducing inequalities in distribution of income and wealth? Land reforms and redistribution of agriculture land. Various land reforms like tenancy reforms. Then we have abolition of zamindari system. These tenancy reforms have been introduced so that the excess land is taken over and they are redistributed to the landless people so that inequalities can be reduced. Control over monopolies and restrictive trade practices. As the industries are under complete monopoly for 2 decades after independence, Indian industries are completely under the hands of monopoly. So restrictions were kept on the trade practices. Means certain restrictions, certain limitations were kept on the trade what they are doing. So later on in 1991, they have government has introduced liberalization policy where most of the monopolies have merged. They have taken over the small companies and supported the development of the economy where more and more units are set up, which creates employment opportunities, and in return that will help for reducing the inequalities in the country. Employment and wage policies. Employment and wage policies are the programs that were introduced in the country to create employment in the rural areas. Mostly rural people, they don't want to move to urban areas. That mobilization is very less in India because of this joint family system, because of our culture, mobilization is less. So what we are doing here, create employment in the rural areas only, so that as we have the plenty of human resources, if we use them, one hand employment will be created, on the other hand development of the economy is also possible. So with that intention, these employment and wage policies have been introduced in the country. Then social security measures. What are social security measures? Providing the security to the people in the society, either financial security, job security, or any security they require, that is provided. So in the organizations, how they are providing? Workmen compensation is given in case of death or injury or like that. Then maternity benefit is given, as well as the programs also they are giving PPF, employee provident fund is provided to save their money, right? So that measures are given which will help for security in the society. Minimum needs program, with the basic needs, the basic essential need for the people. Mostly poor people consumption levels are very low. They will not consume all the items as the people who will whose income is high, they will consume in a better way. Whose income is low, they cannot consume. So for this, what the measure they have taken here? They have provided the basic food grains at subsidized prices, which we get in our public distribution system, right? Through ration shops, we get at subsidized prices, so that poor people, these rural poor people or the people who are below the poverty line, they are able to consume the basic needs of their life. Okay, as well as education is provided at a subsidized prices, scholarships are given to the people, health is also provided at a low cost to them. These all will increase the standard of living of the people, so that to some extent inequalities will be reduced. Next is the program for upliftment of rural poor. The programs like Resource and Income Development Program, Special Area Development Program, Work Creating Supplementary Employment Opportunity Program. These are the programs that were taken up to reduce inequalities in the country. And taxation. after the means when the inequalities are arised in the country, taxation system was changed. They have changed that to a progressive taxation system in order to control the wealth. So, in order to control the wealth among few people, this taxation policy was taken. A progressive taxation policy was introduced. Okay, so these are the main measures that were taken to reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth. Okay, so just go through once here. From your textbook, make 3 points out of each program, each point. Then you can write down the points here. So hope you all understood this answer, which is very, very important for your LAQ. How do you reduce inequalities? Okay, now the next topic we are going to discuss is about the concept of poverty. Again, poverty is also an important concept. You may get this for SAQ or LAQ, or even for 2 marks also you may get this question. Just we will discuss the concepts and the causes here. Okay, basically when we call that there is a poverty, poverty means what? Poverty means in general, when people's income levels are not sufficient to satisfy their basic needs. Such people come below the poverty line. Means based on income we calculate here. When their income levels are not sufficient to satisfy basic necessities of life, then they will come below the poverty line. Okay, so that is called as poverty here. Now in this poverty, we are having 2 concepts of poverty. What are the 2 concepts of poverty? Just we will see. First one is absolute poverty. Absolute poverty. This will come for 2 marks. Okay. Absolute poverty, where the income levels are not sufficient to have minimum subsistence level. Okay. So we can say here absolute poverty. People who are absolutely poor means what? Their consumption expenditure, or income levels are less. Their consumption and income levels are less, where they are unable to satisfy minimum subsistence level. Minimum subsistence level. What is minimum subsistence level? Minimum subsistence level means for their survival, they require few items which we have to consume here, like cereals, pulses, milk products. The minimum requirement is there for a person to survive. For that minimum food items we want to take, we have to spend our money for that, right? Cereals, pulses, milk products, then comes your egg, poultry, and all will come. So their income levels are so less that they are unable to satisfy the minimum subsistence level. In this case, we say that people are absolutely poor. Okay, so the concept of absolute poverty is calculated in, it is relevant to developing countries. Mostly in developing countries, we calculate these absolute poverty. So basically, what is the minimum subsistence level that a person is required here? They require 2,400 calories in rural areas. Minimum subsistence level means what? People require 2,400 calories in rural areas and 2,100 calories in urban areas. If their income meets these much of calories, then they are not absolutely poor. If their income levels are less than this minimum subsistence level, then they come as an absolutely poor people. Okay, 2,400 calories and 2,100 calories for urban areas. So this is how we calculate absolute poverty, and it is related to the developing economies here. Okay, now next concept we have, that is relative poverty. What is relative poverty? Relative poverty is nothing but means we don't consider consumption levels, but here we consider the income distribution of the people. In relative poverty, income distribution of people is considered. Okay, how income distribution is considered over here? Top 5 to 10% people are compared with bottom 5 to 10% people. Top 5 to 10% high income people, high income is compared by bottom 5 to 10% low income people. In this comparison means top 5 to 10 high income earning people are compared with bottom 5 to 10% of low income earning people. When the comparison is done, we call it as relative poverty. Okay, when the comparison between high income people and low income people is done, we call it as relative poverty. In relative poverty, we don't consider the minimum subsistence level. See the difference here. In absolute only, we calculate the minimum subsistence level, the intake of calories, subsistence, intake of calories for our survival, how many calories we require, whether our money is sufficient to take the calories or not. Whereas relative means what? We compare the income levels of the people. Okay, so by comparing here, we say there is a relative poverty in the country. And this concept of relative poverty is relevant to developed economies, because in developed economies, people income levels are sufficient for intake of calories, but they compare with their income levels. Okay, got the difference between these two? Absolute means what? When their income is not sufficient for intake of minimum calories, we call it as absolutely poor. Relative means what? When their income levels are compared, and the poverty is calculated. So absolute poverty is calculated in developing countries and relative poverty is calculated in developed countries. Okay, so these are the two concepts of poverty. Now, next we are going to discuss one more question. Those will be coming for 2 marks, and now we will study with what are the causes for poverty. This question you may get it for 10 marks or for 5 marks, right? So that's why important concept we will discuss here. Now, what are the causes of poverty in India? The main cause is that, first one, concentration of economic power. Concentration of economic power. Concentration of economic power means what here? Generally, whatever the inequalities we are having in the country, like rich people, poor people and all, the programs, whatever the programs are taken up in the country, rich people are getting the advantage from that, poor people are not getting any benefit from that. So, as there is an income gap between the people, like rural, urban bias is there, income differences are there, high income people, low income people are there, rich people and poor people are there. So these all have increased in the country. So what happened here in the Indian economy, as the income gap is increasing, there arises, the rich people are getting the benefits of development and poor are not getting any benefits from the development. Like in India, if you see, they are taking various development programs like construction of metro rails, construction of roads, highways and all. With all these development programs, is it helping poor people to earn some money? Is it helping to the poor people to get employment? Not everyone. Only few people are getting benefited here, right? So that way, whatever the concentration of economic power, the development process is done in the country, it is used only by the rich people. They are getting the benefits of that, and poor people are not able to increase their standard of living. That's why rich people are becoming rich, poor people are still poor only. Because of the development process, they are unable to take the development benefits. Okay, that is one cause of poverty here. Still poverty arises in our country. Under exploitation of natural resources. Under exploitation of natural resources. As we know, India is having a plenty of resources available, especially if you take in rural areas. So many resources are available there. Human resource, natural resource, mineral resource, all are available. But because of lack of knowledge, because of lack of money, we are unable to utilize them to the maximum extent. So as a developing country, we have seen the same problem here. Though we have the natural resources, we are unable to utilize them because of lack of technology, lack of skilled labor, lack of investments. So that is one reason, though we have the resources, we are unable to utilize the resources. When resources are not utilized to full extent, production capacity will decrease. When the production is less, obviously we cannot create employment in the society. So that may be the reason for the poverty. Still poverty exists in our country. If we utilize our resources to the full capacity, more production will be done, more employment will be created, poverty can be reduced, but that is not happening in our country. Next, another cause is heavy population pressure. As India is having excess population, that is also one reason here. Population explosion, as we have seen in yesterday's previous class, right? What is population explosion? When food grain production is not sufficient for increasing population. We get population explosion as the people are increasing, but the production of food grains are not increasing. What will happen? Poor people are unable to buy them and they are unable to consume the food grains. So that there again absolute poverty will happen there, because they are unable to intake the calories, they are unable to take the minimum subsistence level. Okay, so heavy population pressure is one reason, and another reason for poverty is unemployment. Yes, we know if people are unemployed, no source of income, or again they will go under the poverty line. So unemployment, why they are unemployed here? Lack of education, less production in the country, lack of skilled people, skilled labor are not there, right? That is the reason for unemployment. And poor education. The education standards in our country means poor education in the sense people in rural areas are not availing the education facilities. Especially if you see in rural areas, poor people, what they will feel? They don't send their children to the schools. Instead, they send them for work. Means they are taking their children as a source of income. So when they do not have educational facilities, when they do not have education, obviously unemployment will be there. As unemployment is there, poverty will be arising in the country, right? So people, as major cause is, like in rural areas, one is lack of educational facilities. Though education facilities is there, people are not ready to send their children. When education is not there, obviously poverty cannot be reduced. Okay, then another cause for poverty is low availability of essentials. The essential commodities for consumption, their availability is less. Why their availability is less here? Because of production. The consumer goods shortage is responsible for low availability of essential. Consumer good production is low in our country. That is a reason for low availability. When there is low availability, scarcity will be there. Price increases, poor people are unable to buy. So poverty still continues in the country. Another cause is inflation. What is inflation? Continuous increase in the price levels. When the prices are increasing continuously, poor people are unable to buy the commodities. So when they are unable to buy the commodities, obviously absolute poverty will arise in the country. So inflation is also one reason, because shortage of production, supply is less, demand is more. When supply is less and demand is more, inflation arises. Next cause is low technology. The technology which is used in production houses are backward, because as a developing country, that much capital deficiency is there in our country. When there is a capital deficiency, technology also we are using low level of technology. When there is low technology, production output will be less. Again, when output is less, supply will be less, but demand is more because of huge population. When supply is less and demand is more, obviously that causes poverty. Okay, so low technology is one reason over here. Capital deficiency, lack of investments. As we have seen the same feature of our developing country, low income, low savings, and low investments. So capital deficiency, the development of a country depends on huge investments, capital formation in the country. As most of the people are illiterate, unskilled, and they are using outdated models of production, that development process is low in the country, which is resulting in low income, low savings. So this is not helping the country for rapid growth. And another cause of poverty is failure of 5-year plans. Though 5-year plans are introduced in the country with the intention to reduce the poverty, Garibi Hatao program was introduced, employment is created to the poor people, subsidies are given to the poor people. So though all these programs have introduced, still the implementation part is a failure in our country, right? Though the programs are very good for poverty eradication, but the implementation, there is a lack of implementation from the administration side. So with that lack of implementation, failure of 5-year plans is a reason. still poverty is existing in our country. And another cause is LPG model of development. What is LPG model here? Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Here, liberalization, giving freedom to the industrial sector from government rules and restrictions. Privatization, more and more private companies, like public sector companies, are converted into private sectors. Globalization, global economies, global companies are doing trade in India. So these all helped the rich people and the industrial sector, but this could not help for the development of agriculture sector. So when agriculture sector is backward, as we know, India is an agricultural economy. 70% of population are depending in rural areas. More than 50% of population depend on agriculture for their livelihood. So with these LPG model, there is nothing to do with agriculture sector. So poverty could not be removed. Means LPG could not help to reduce the problem of poverty in the country. Okay, that's why still poverty is existing in the country. And finally, another cause is social factors. Society. In the society, though the people are low income, though the people who are very poor, still celebrations are compulsory. Festivals, when they get, they will take loans, they will debts will be there. They take debt and they will do the festival and all, celebrate them. So with that, societal factors where the celebrations are must, for that they will take loans, debts are increasing for the poor people. So how much ever income they earn, they are using that income, some of the income, for unproductive purpose, with which still they are lying below the poverty line. Okay, so social factors are also reason over here. So these are the causes for poverty. If you are getting for 10 marks, you should write all the points. If you get the same question for 5 marks, any 6 points you write down. For 10 marks, you will be writing around 12 points. For 5 marks, same question you may get for 5 marks also. For 5 marks, you will be writing around 6 points. This is enough. Any 6 points, whichever is easy for you, any 6 points you can take and write over here. Okay. So what are the causes for poverty? Poor people still existing, poverty still exists in our Indian economy because concentration of economic power, whatever the development programs are taken up in the country, those all are benefiting. Rich people are taking the advantage of the development. Poor people are unable to increase their standard of living. Okay. Under exploitation of natural resources, though resources are available in the country, people are in the rural areas, they are unable to utilize the resources. So when the resources are not utilized to the full extent, production levels will be reduced. Heavy population pressure, one of the major feature. As the population is increasing, food production is not sufficient to them. Again, they will go below the poverty. Unemployment, major cause for poverty is unemployment. When people are not educated, when people does not have skills, unemployment will be there. Poor education. In India, education facilities are very low, especially in rural areas. Though they have increased the educational facilities in the country, people are not ready to send their children for education because poor people below the poverty line people, they feel that their children are the economic source for them. So that education is also one reason which will not increase the skills of the labor. Low availability of essentials. Why? The consumer goods production is less, due to which availability of the consumer goods are low. So supply will be less, demand will be more. It increases the price, that is inflation. When the prices are increasing, poor people are unable to buy them. So that results in poverty. Low technology. Technology which is used in the production is outdated or obsolete technology. When we use low technology, production levels will be less. Obviously, supply will be less. Capital deficiency, because of lack of capital, we use outdated methodology. So we are unable to have the rapid growth in our development. So poverty still exists in our country. Failure of 5-year plans, though 5-year plans were done in the country, like poverty removal programs have taken, creation of employment were taken, but the implementation was not proper. So it has a failure of 5-year plans, which could not reduce the poverty problem. Though how many 5-year plans are done in the country, still 18% of population in the country remains below the poverty line. LPG model of development, liberalization, privatization, and globalization model of development could not develop the rural areas. It could help only the urban areas and the industrial sector, but they neglected the agriculture and the rural areas. So that is the reason still poverty exists in Indian economy. Social factors in the society, the celebrations, festivals, and all are compulsory. Though the people's income levels are low, still they take loans and debts and they try to celebrate that. Means they are spending their money for unproductive activities, due to which still poverty exists in the country. So these are the causes for poverty. Just go through these answers. As I told you, for 10 marks, if you are getting 12 points, you have to write. 10 if you write also, okay. For 5 marks, 6 points you have to write. Okay. For this points explanation, once go through from your textbook and you can give any meaningful points for this. 2 points, two lines you explain for that. That is enough. Okay. So this completes your one more LAQ of this chapter, causes for poverty. Just go through once. So today's topics, what we have discussed, how do you reduce inequalities in distribution of income and wealth, right? Means as an Indian developing economy, we find inequalities in our country, how we reduce that one. Then what is poverty and what are the causes for poverty. So if you remember the side headings of each and every question, it will be easy for you to write in your exam. Okay. So just try to remember these side headings. The explanation related to the concept, you can give your explanation. So what are the, how do you reduce inequalities? Land reforms and redistribution of agriculture land, control over monopolies and restrictive trade practices, employment and wage policies, social security measures, minimum needs program for uplift of rural poor, and taxation. Okay. So if you see the explanation, land reforms, tenancy reforms, land ceiling act and all, excess land is taken and they are redistributed to landless people. Monopolies are controlled over here, restrictions on their trade with liberalization, merger, takeover of a small units are done, which helped in reducing inequality. Employment and wage policy, various programs which create employment in the rural areas like IRDP program, NREP program, right? MGNREGS program. These all programs were introduced to create employment in the country. As employment levels are increasing, inequalities can be reduced. Social security measures, workmen compensation, provident fund. These all provides the security to the people in the society. Minimum needs program, the food or the education or health, which are basic necessities of life, they are provided at the subsidized prices. So which poor people can, low income people can consume them, their consumption levels will increase, which will try to reduce the inequalities. Program for uplift of rural poor, programs like resource and income development program, special area development program, work creating work, supplementary work environment that will uplift the rural poor so that inequalities can be reduced. Taxation, in country they started progressive taxation system where the concentration of wealth in one hand will be reduced. Okay, so these are the measures to reduce the inequalities in distribution of income and wealth. Now coming to the poverty, important question, absolute and relative poverty, compulsory you'll get for this from this for 2 marks. What is absolute poverty? Whose consumption level, expenditure or income levels are less than and they are unable to satisfy minimum subsistence level. What is minimum subsistence level? The intake of calories. The minimum subsistence level is 2,400 calories in rural areas and 2,100 calories in the urban areas. So as their income is not sufficient to intake these many calories, then they are absolutely poor. So the concept of absolute poverty is mostly calculated in developing countries. And relative poverty, we don't calculate based on calories intake. We calculate based on income level. Comparison of top 5 to 10% high income earning people, comparing with them with the bottom 5 to 10% of low income people. By comparing, we calculate the relative poverty. Relative poverty concept is calculated in developed economies. So these are the two concepts of poverty and causes for poverty. Why poverty still exists in India? Though we say India is a developing economy, fast developing economy, many measures are taken for development. Still we find people below the poverty line. What are the reasons for that? Concentration of economic power, underexploitation of natural resources, heavy population pressure, unemployment, poor education, low availability of essentials, inflation, low technology, capital deficiency, failure of 5-year plans, LPG model of development, and social factors. So just go through these answers here. How do you reduce income inequalities and causes for poverty and the concepts of poverty? Okay, so that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with a new topic, that is unemployment, which is again important for your 5 marks and 2 marks and all. So just go through whatever topics we have discussed it today. Okay. Thank you all.